Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, the full version is available on Patreon. I'll be uploading all my content there going forward.
Chapter 1. Hurry and store your brain, and you'll get 2 servings of brains back in 100 years. There's a discount on storing brains now. You'll randomly receive 1 devil fruit for each brain you store. Is this the flame fruit? Dunn's eyes widened as he stared at the orange fruit with its strange flames inside the antique wooden box. Is this the world of One Piece? Although he surveyed his surroundings and was shocked by the bird's nest at least 20 meters in diameter and the giant trees at least 100 or 200 meters tall, he realized that this was not his original world. Because his original world didn't have birds that big or trees that tall, unless he returned to the era when ancient behemoths roamed. In my memory, the only thing I remember is those 2 headlights rushing towards him when he was crossing the pedestrian crossing at night with takeout in his arms. Did they hit the jackpot? A stroke of incredible luck in every sense of the word. The legend is actually true? That's outrageous. Even more absurdly, while searching for a way down from this place at least 100 meters above the ground, he found an old-fashioned wooden box. When he opened the box, he saw strange fruits with distinctive characteristics inside. As an anime that has been popular for 20 years, Dunn had naturally seen it, and this peculiar fruit was easy to identify. So, I really did travel to the world of One Piece. Dunn subconsciously took the orange fruit out of the box and muttered to himself. I still can't believe it, but there's an even better way to confirm it. Dunn looked at the fruit in his hand and pursed his lips. If this is truly the pirate world, which is extremely dangerous for ordinary people, then for him, this devil fruit, which is said to be so dangerous that even dogs wouldn't eat it, is his current lifeline. Given his current condition, he would be unable to withstand most dangers. Even if you manage to escape this island and find a populated place, you still won't be able to fight off pirates. The story doesn't depict the pirates actually killing people, but now he has truly come to this world. After all, this is a natural type. Despite being ridiculed, it is still a fruit of the natural type, and a flame representing the power of nature. Putting everything else aside, the passive elementalization alone is enough to handle most dangers. It just means you'll become a landlubber. However, its merits outweigh its flaws. Almost instantly, these thoughts echoed in Dunn's mind. Then his gaze returned to the fruit in his hand, and his throat involuntarily moved as he swallowed. If consuming it grants access to the power of Logia-type fire, then this is definitely the world of pirates. If he doesn't obtain this power or even dies from poison, then he's just unlucky. Click. Without further thought, Dunn took a bite out of the flame fruit in his hand. The taste is right. Almost the instant the fruit entered his mouth, this thought popped into Dunn's mind. In the world of One Piece, the taste of devil fruits is described as extremely unpleasant. No one can calmly face the taste of a devil fruit. In fact, many people describe devil fruits as tastier than devil fruit X. But now, he seemed to understand that feeling. He didn't know what X tasted like, but the fruit pulp in his mouth now was a combination of the most disgusting tastes he had ever hated in his life. It was as if his body was desperately resisting the fruit being eaten. This is a disgust that comes from the depths of one's soul. But Dunn, having struck it rich with luck, also developed a fierce determination. You can't stand firm if you're not ruthless. It's harder to be ruthless to yourself than to be ruthless to others. Dunn stretched his neck with difficulty, swallowed the fruit in his mouth whole, and then took a bite of the remaining fruit in his hand. Click, click. One bite after another. After taking the last bite, Dunn collapsed, his face turning blue. This is the body's stress response. Now I finally understand why so many time-traveling predecessors said that devil fruits were as unpalatable as X. They may not have eaten X, but they certainly thought that X was the most unpalatable thing in the world. But Dunn had a feeling that, compared to devil fruits, X might even be considered delicious. After a long while, Dunn managed to sit up with difficulty, and the discomfort in his body gradually disappeared. At the same time, he also felt something, like instinct or power, emerging within his body. Bang! A flame rose and burned in his raised hand. The high temperature had no effect on him, on the contrary, he felt warm. The flames had no effect on the clothes he was wearing. No, it should be said that even the clothes on his arms turned into flames. With a wave of his hand, he dispersed the flames, leaving the sleeve of his garment on his wrist completely undamaged. It's confirmed. I've arrived in the world of One Piece and become a devil fruit user. So, what am I now? A burnt man. Dunn muttered something to himself. What appears to be self-deprecating humor is actually a sign that Dunn is relaxed. Although he is generally calm, no one can remain composed when faced with something that seems like time travel. Despite his calm demeanor, Dunn was actually in a state of utter panic. In particular, he discovered a huge bird's nest at his feet and 3 enormous eggs inside the nest, each taller than him. Even dinosaurs couldn't produce something that big. Now, with this ability to transform into elements, at least for now and in the future, the crises we may encounter are no longer crises. After all, Logia-type Devil Fruit users are practically invincible against opponents who don't possess Haki. The ability to passively transform into elements alone is enough to leave these opponents helpless. That means they now have the means to make a living. Having figured this out, Dunn felt relieved and was finally able to calmly assess his surroundings. There was a huge bird's nest under my feet, perhaps 20 meters in diameter. If the nest has an owner, then the bird's wingspan is estimated to be 40 or 50 meters. If you don't have a concept of it, the wingspan of the Tu-160 is 54 meters. Even with the power of the flame fruit as his advantage, Dunn had no intention of confronting this monster directly. After circling around, Dunn frowned and remained silent. Going down wouldn't be easy. Although his Logia-type abilities might allow him to survive a fall of 100 or 200 meters without dying, Dunn didn't want to try. He's not as cute as Duo. They don't have that terrifying physique. Yes, he has confirmed that his body is indeed his. Although he looks like a 14 or 15-year-old, it is still his body. The scar on his knee from the accident when he was a child is still there. This is troublesome. Dunn frowned and sighed, then his gaze fell on the 3 enormous eggs in the bird's nest. Another method is to set the bird's nest on fire. Despite its enormous size, the bird's nest was constructed from twigs, dry grass, and huge feathers, making it an excellent source of ignition. The flame fruit's power allows him to survive in flames, he simply needs to land on the supporting tree trunk below. Who knows, we might even get to try some grilled bird eggs. Chapter 2. Dunn is doing something that others cannot imitate. The flames on his body completely ignited the bird's nest beneath his feet. Dead wood, dry grass, and feathers are the best accelerants. In just a few moments, the flames spread to the entire bird's nest, and the burning nest at the top of the giant tree looked like a huge torch. Surrounded by flames, Dunn felt not hot at all, but rather very comfortable. It's like soaking in a hot spring, your whole body feels warm and cozy. Having just acquired this extraordinary power, Dunn was actually quite interested in studying the power of the flame fruit. However, now is definitely not a good opportunity. Let's figure these things out after we get down to the ground. However, Dunn could also foresee that if he relied solely on the power of the flame fruit, he might end up becoming another ace. Although he became a renowned and powerful figure on the sea thanks to the power of his devil fruit, his reliance on the flame fruit led him to neglect the development of Haki, making ace seem weak. Of course, it's also possible that they suffered from a version issue. If given the opportunity, I should improve my devil fruit abilities, Haki, swordsmanship, and physique. Standing amidst the burning flames, Dunn pondered. Especially when it comes to domineering presence, you may not be the best, but you can't lack it. I wonder if he, as a time traveler, can learn this method. After all, he wasn't a native of this world. If I can't learn it, I might as well just find somewhere in the world to eke out a living. For a moment, Dunn's thoughts were somewhat jumbled. Then, a cracking sound rang out, and Dunn smelled an extremely enticing aroma, so distinct amidst the smell of burning embers. Instinctively, Dunn took a step, and the raging flames subsided, converging towards him. Dunn's gaze fell on the 3 bird eggs in the middle of the nest. The blue bird eggs had charred shells, and one egg's shell had burst open, revealing the golden brown egg white inside. The enticing aroma lingered around his nose, making Dunn swallow hard before stepping over. Dunn has been in this world for some time now, and has eaten nothing but a devil fruit. Although he ate the entire fruit, it dissolved as soon as it entered his stomach. Simply put, it doesn't keep you full. So, walking up to the charred, exploded giant egg, Dunn reached out and broke open the charred shell, then scooped out a piece of egg white that was golden brown on the outside and soft on the inside. With just one bite, Dunn felt that nothing he had ever eaten before could compare to this one. Not to mention he just ate a devil fruit. An indescribable sense of happiness welled up inside me. Being able to eat something delicious when you're hungry feels so wonderful. However, before he had even taken a few bites, Dunn heard a mournful bird cry coming from afar, and his body jolted, and he abruptly looked in the direction from which the sound came. A large bird with brightly colored feathers spread its wings and flew towards us. And the mournful bird cries continued to ring out from time to time. Oh no! If someone burns down another person's house and eats their child, what will the consequences be? Almost instinctively, Dunn wanted to find a place to hide. But the giant bird was too fast. In just a few breaths, it was like a supersonic fighter jet, arriving above the nest with a terrifying roar. Dunn also spotted the arriving giant bird. Its feathers were incredibly beautiful, and its wings spread out above the nest, giving Dunn a feeling of being able to cover the sky. The giant bird's head resembled a dinosaur's head with an extra beak. Boom! The giant bird landed directly on the nest, seemingly unconcerned about the burning remains. His huge eyes were filled with anger as he stared intently at Dunn, who was still clutching a piece of egg white in his hand. Over. This was Dunn's first thought upon seeing the giant bird. That's FG weird. This was his second idea. The bird's design is quite challenging to understand, but considering this is the world of One Piece. Oh, that's alright then. Even with the giant bird's hateful eyes staring at him, Dunn couldn't help but start letting his mind wander. Humans really are the type to not shed tears until they see the coffin. Roar! The giant bird suddenly opened its beak and roared at Dunn. In an instant, a gust of wind, carrying the smell of fish, rushed towards Dunn. Before Dunn could react to the stench, the bird's nest, which already had a flame, was reignited by the strong wind. The giant bird, which had landed in its nest, was also startled by the sudden burst of flames. But then it became clearly even angrier, its long neck and head slamming down on the bird's nest like a giant meteor hammer. Holy crap! Dunn hadn't expected this bird to be so fierce. Don't you want your 3 chicks anymore? Although they were all familiar with each other, Dunn, along with the entire bird's nest, was smashed and sent flying. The nest scattered in the air, along with a large number of glittering golden objects, which were also smashed and scattered in all directions. Boom! Flames erupted around Dunn, igniting the dry branches and other debris that had fallen around him. In that instant, a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 10 meters appeared in the sky. The giant bird, having destroyed its own nest, spread its wings and charged towards the fireball in the sky, creating a gust of wind. The fireball was blasted apart by the giant bird, exploding into a sky full of fireworks. Behind the burning giant bird, Dunn's body materialized, floating in the air, feeling his strength draining away. As expected, reassembling the body after elementalization requires stamina. Just now, after using those burning materials to create fireballs, which were then shattered by this giant bird, I could clearly feel this situation. How do I kill this bird? The two sides are now locked in a life-or-death struggle, only the death of one of them can bring peace. But killing such a behemoth is no easy task. The moment Dunn had this thought, he saw a gigantic mouth with countless teeth lunging at him. That's right. Birds can twist their necks behind their backs. This was the only thought that came to Dunn's mind after he was swallowed. Boom! Having just swallowed Dunn, flames seemed to erupt from the bird's beak like a jet of fire, making it appear as if it were a flamethrower. The giant bird, which was in the air, let out a mournful cry and crashed to the ground, tumbling and struggling. The flames on its body, as they rolled, ignited everything around it. My lads, do you see that? There must be treasure there. Not far from the burning island, a pirate ship was charging towards it. The one speaking was a pirate wielding a scimitar, who stood at the bow of the ship and shouted excitedly. Oh! The pirates on the ship responded immediately. They had just seen from afar that a huge torch had been lit on the island, and then they saw flames filling the sky, and countless golden specks of light falling in the sunlight. It's absolutely a treasure trove. Isn't that what going out to sea to become a pirate all about? So, the fearless pirates charged forward. As for the angry bird that just flew back, nobody saw it at all. Then, the pirate ship approached the island, and the pirates on board were immediately drawn to the countless golden lights scattered on the beach. What a treasure! Chapter 3. Scattered on the shallow beach were large pieces of wood and a great deal of glittering treasure. All of these were plundered by the giant bird from other places and stored in its nest. Due to the previous impact, the broken wood used to build the nest and a large amount of treasure were scattered throughout the island. Now, these treasures have completely captured the attention of these pirates. With a cheer, the pirates filed off the ship, excitedly searching for the treasure. These excited fellows seemed to have forgotten the island that was burning before them. The giant bird had stopped struggling, flames surged from its body, and everything around it had turned into raging fire. This is a Logia-type Devil Fruit user. Even Dunn, who had just eaten the fruit, could control flames powerful enough to kill this ferocious beast. Even though the giant bird was physically powerful, it had no power to resist the flames surging from its body. Orange flames gathered at the burning bird's head, and then a hand suddenly emerged from the huge beak and grabbed the edge of the beak. Then, Dunn emerged, his body ablaze with flames. Orange flames draped over his body like a coat, and his black hair seemed to turn orange under the influence of the flames, swaying as they danced. Ding! Elite level enemy defeated, data processing in progress. Dunn, still reeling from the series of events, was startled awake by something that suddenly appeared in his mind. Datafication? Is it the system? He was naturally familiar with what a system was. Now that time travel had even happened, it was only natural that there would be another system. Elite enemies? Does it refer to this large bird? Dunn turned and glanced at the still burning bird, a sense of understanding flashing through his mind. Data processing successful. Enable data processing panel. Yes. Another notification sounded, and Dunn confirmed it without any hesitation. After he confirmed it, a not too complicated panel appeared before his eyes. Body datafication, your vital points have disappeared. Upon being attacked, damage is converted into health deduction. Your panel attributes will change based on your own strength. You will not die until your health reaches 0. Current physical age, 14 years old. Constitution, 1.7, rapidly changing due to certain influences. Current HP, 91%, recovering, eating will restore HP quickly. Innate talent, unyielding when your health reaches 0, enter a brief enhanced state, all your physical attributes are increased tenfold, your health will no longer decrease, all negative status effects will be removed. Current duration, 10 minutes, cooldown, 1 day. Ability. Flame Fruit, initial mastery. A powerful Logia-type Devil Fruit ability, granting the ability to transform into and control flames, continuously strengthens the body. The fruit's drawbacks have been eliminated, weaknesses and the host soul, current fruit development, weak. Is this a famous sword? Dunn stroked his chin, focusing his attention on his own talent. The unyielding effect is very powerful, it grants 10 minutes of invincibility when receiving a fatal attack. The most amazing thing is that it also provides a 10-fold boost to physical attributes for 10 minutes. Doesn't this show that he can turn the tables and win with a sliver of health? However, his physical weakness had disappeared, and Dunn thought about it and realized that it was a perfect fit for Logia-type abilities. Logia-type users are essentially immune to weaknesses, but they are not entirely safe against opponents skilled in Haki or those with abilities that counter them. And it is at this moment that the power of eliminating weaknesses becomes apparent. But no matter what, Dunn's assessment of body data can be summed up in just 3 words. That's incredible. After receiving a fatal attack, you will enter a 10-minute invincible state. During these 10 minutes, all your attributes will be increased 10-fold, and you will not lose health. This talent, as he grows stronger in the future, will become increasingly terrifying. Of course, the power of body data goes beyond this. The ability to eliminate vital points is also extremely powerful. When vital points are attacked, only a portion of health will be forcibly deducted, while common weak points such as the heart will disappear. Furthermore, health will automatically regenerate, and eating will quickly restore it. In just a short while, my health has recovered from 91 to 96, and it looks like I'll be fully healed soon. Of course, my own situation involves much more than just these changes, but I'll probably have to explore the details gradually later. But what Dunn now understands has already satisfied him greatly, or rather, has far exceeded his expectations. If before, when Dunn obtained the flame fruit, he only thought about living a peaceful life in this world, now, with this confidence, he might just be able to compete with the top powerhouses on the high seas. A person's ambition always changes along with their own strength. Of course, the most urgent task now is to figure out where we are and how to continue to become stronger. Dunn looked at the flames burning around him, smelled the aroma of charred meat and thick smoke in the air, and stepped forward. I've arrived in the world of One Piece. A moment later, Dunn emerged from the area engulfed by the flames and stared at the pirates who had come in search of the scattered treasure. The elementalization of his body was not lifted, the burning flames danced around Dunn like a large, orange-red trench coat. The pirate who witnessed this scene swallowed hard. A demon of the sea. Low-level pirates have never even heard of devil fruits. A person engulfed in flames was clearly beyond the comprehension of these pirates. Damn it, what demon? He clearly obtained a treasure. A disheveled pirate, wielding a gleaming scimitar, approached with a dozen or so henchmen, staring at Dunn, who was engulfed in flames. Dunn's gaze swept over these people, then moved past them to the pirate ship docked at the shore. This is a specialty of the One Piece world. Pirates emerge in droves, setting sail for all sorts of reasons. I didn't see any pirate ships around the island from the bird's nest above, they were probably attracted by the burning flames. To Dunn's surprise, it was pirates speaking, and he could understand them. Is it due to datafication or time travel? The thought lingered in Dunn's mind for a moment, but didn't linger. Because a scimitar was already at his neck. You brat, hand over the treasure you've obtained, and the great Lord Doru will spare your life and let you board my ship. So, great Lord Doru, do you have a bounty? Dunn glanced at the knife at his neck and asked calmly. Of course, I'm a pirate with a bounty of 2.5 million berries. In the East Blue, I'm already the strongest. 2.5 million pellis? Dunn smiled. The seed funding is here. Chapter 4. This is the East Daxia Sea. Dunn calmly looked at the arrogant pirate in front of him, Doru, whose bounty was 2.5 million berries. According to stereotypes, most pirates are clueless and arrogant when they are not in danger. A bounty of 2.5 million is nothing, even in the weakest of the East Daxia seas. However, what caught Dunn's attention was the green label on Doru's head. Elite Pirates. Is this a data-driven assessment of the enemy? Dunn's gaze swept over the heads of the other pirates who had gathered around him. All the labels were grey. Henchmen, minion leaders, poor people. Is it a fixed evaluation or an evaluation relative to oneself? Dunn pondered this in his mind. But his calm demeanor only fueled the anger of Doru, who was holding a knife. After a year at sea, he raided several islands. Although he didn't seize any valuable treasures, all the weaker people he encountered showed him fear. This brat in front of me, with my knife to his neck, still dares to daydream. The sight of pirates closing in made Doru feel that his authority was being challenged. You brat, you're pretty arrogant. Doru's face hardened, his tone turned grim, and with a sudden burst of force, his right hand, holding the knife, slashed across Dunn's neck. That was so easy. Doru was taken aback, then looked at Dunn, who had turned his gaze to him. The wound on his neck, severed by a single blow, was burning with orange-red flames, yet not a drop of blood flowed out. After the flames died down, the wounds had healed. Current HP, 100%. Doru instinctively took a step back, looking at Dunn in horror. Although he wasn't very intelligent, what he had just witnessed made him realize that the person in front of him was someone he couldn't handle. Dunn glanced at Doru, the flames enveloping his body completely subsided, and walked towards the pirate ship docked on the shore. The surrounding pirates fell silent, hastily making way for Dunn as he watched him leave. Glug. Doru swallowed hard. Captain. A pirate who looked like a minor leader cautiously approached and called out, startling Doru, who was looking terrified. A hole. Startled awake, Doru seemed somewhat embarrassed and angry, his scimitar trembling slightly. Boarding. Under the watchful eyes of numerous pirates, Doru hesitated for a long time before finally speaking. This is a deserted island, if you don't board the ship, you're doomed. After the flames die down, there will probably be nothing left on the island. As for swimming to other islands? They had only one choice, return to the ship and await their unknown fate. And Dunn certainly understood this as well. Aside from knowing that this is the East Blue in the world of One Piece, he knows nothing else, so he needs a guide. Of course, these pirates were also mobile money bags to him. After all, there are pirate hunters in this world. A moment later, Dunn sat behind a wooden box, with dozens of pirates standing opposite him, their faces full of trepidation. Where is the nearest naval base? After sizing up the pirates, Dunn spoke. As soon as he spoke, the group of pirates exchanged glances, then turned their attention to Doru, who was standing in front of them. Doru naturally noticed this situation and couldn't help but curse inwardly. Naval Division 16. Set sail for the 16th Division, Dunn nodded and said with a smile. We're pirates. Upon hearing this, Doru's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets, and he instinctively shouted. Other pirates also started to stir. Snap! Upon hearing this, Dunn snapped his fingers, and a burst of sparks flew from his fingertips. The next moment, with a loud boom, the sparks expanded and instantly turned into a fireball more than a meter in diameter. The disorganized pirates retreated in terror, staring in horror at the fireball hovering at Dunn's fingertips. Set sail! Dunn spoke again, and this time, the pirates quickly got to work. Nobody wants to experience what it feels like to be hit by a fireball. All the pirates started to get busy. Even those who had nothing to do pretended to be busy, for fear of being spotted by Dunn. The pirates on the ship breathed a sigh of relief after the fireball disappeared. Doru, feeling uneasy, packed the treasure he had collected from the island into a bag and presented it to Dunn. Faced with the immense fear of the unknown, even a fool would know what choice to make. Is this the East Daxia Sea? Dunn glanced at the treasures, not quite understanding their value, and decided to ask what he wanted to know. Yes, sir. Toru's previous arrogance had completely vanished, he was now incredibly obedient, practically kneeling down to answer. Do you know Windmill Village? Dunn asked. Toru looked completely bewildered. Do you know Shimotsuki Village? Toru was even more confused. Do you know Garp? Seeing Toru's expression, Dunn asked again. Naval hero Garp. Toru hesitated before speaking, clearly puzzled after hearing the name Garp from Dunn. Oh, I know Garp. Dunn nodded, seemingly indicating that he wasn't entirely ignorant. Who is the fleet admiral? Dunn asked again. Toru's expression became confused again. This guy knows a few things, but not many. After questioning him for a full half hour, Dunn still couldn't get a clear answer about the current situation. Even if he knew Garp, Toru only knew the name. Garp was a figure he could never reach. He didn't even know that Garp was from the East Blue. They had absolutely no idea what time it was. When Toru realized he knew nothing about the matter and, seeing Dunn's calm expression, sensed that Dunn was about to explode in anger, he quickly grabbed a newspaper and left. The year was 1511 in the Haiwan calendar. In the corner, there was a photo of Toru and a bounty of 2.5 million, perhaps that's why he was left behind. Boa Hancock, the Empress of the Amazon Lily Kingdom and captain of the Kuja pirates, with a bounty of 80 million, has accepted the Navy's offer to become one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Dunn looked at the major news that occupied an entire page of the newspaper. Then, looking at the somewhat youthful face of the pirate empress, Dunn blinked. So, it's probably still 8 or 9 years before Wang Luffei sets sail. Dunn recalled the memories in his mind, though he couldn't remember the specifics, but it must have been around 1520. Of course, Dunn was only thinking about this to determine the present time in order to formulate the next plan, or rather, the plan to become stronger. The flame fruit gave him a safety net, while data analytics was his trump card. But he will not give up his domineering spirit and swordsmanship. Since it's the East Sea, he should definitely visit Shimotsuki Village, because it might be the easiest place for him to obtain methods for cultivating domineering power and learn decent swordsmanship. Chapter 5. The 16th Detachment of the East Daxia Sea Navy. Sir, sir! The anxious shouts startled the squinting Major Mouse awake. Damn it, what's the rush? Awakened from his nap, Navy Branch Lieutenant Commander Rat glared angrily at the Marine who stormed into his office and roared. Sir, a pirate ship is heading towards the base. Upon entering, the Marine saw the angry-looking Rat, quickly stood at attention, and reported. Hey? Wait, a pirate ship? This news made the still sleepy Major Rat's eyes widen, and he looked at the Marine standing at attention with a puzzled expression. Yes, sir. The Marine who reported nodded repeatedly, indicating that he had not made a mistake. Has the base commander not returned yet? Major Mouse stood up, frowned, and asked. The base commander went back to headquarters to report for duty, he just left not long ago. The Marine answered cautiously when asked. Sound the alarm. Prepare to engage the enemy. The somewhat sleazy-looking Major gave the order, and the Marines who heard it saluted and ran out. The rat-like Major, who had grabbed the long knife beside him, still looked puzzled. There aren't any powerful pirates in the East Blue, let alone those who directly attack Marine bases. What's going on? Grabbing his saber, Lieutenant Commander Rat walked out of the office. At the naval base, alarms sounded, and squads of Marines quickly formed ranks. Lieutenant Commander Rat led hundreds of Marines directly toward the port. The residents of the small town outside the base were all puzzled when they discovered this situation. A large group of Marines, led by Major Rat, arrived at the seaside pier and immediately saw a small pirate ship heading straight for the harbor. Prepare for battle. To become a naval lieutenant commander, Rat was clearly not a clueless guy. After all, he had worked his way up from a Marine to the rank of lieutenant commander. Marines lined up, weapons in hand, waiting for the pirate ship to approach. On the pirate ship, Dunn stood at the bow and had already seen the marines lined up. On the deck of the ship behind him, a group of pirates crouched down with their heads in their hands, and apart from a few pirates who were controlling the ship's course, the other pirates were behaving themselves. "Slow down, come to shore." Dunn turned and gave an order, and the pirate ship, which was sailing at high speed, slowed down. A moment later, the not-so-large pirate ship slowly docked at the pier. Dunn stepped off the ship and his eyes fell on the ranks of the navy. It had rat-like whiskers and a somewhat sleazy-looking face. "I am Lieutenant Commander Rat, Deputy Commander of the 16th Marine Division, number 00733. A pirate, and you even attacked a naval base." As he spoke, the mouse pointed the knife at Dunn. "I'm not a pirate, I'm a pirate hunter. I'm here to deliver pirates and collect my bounty." Dunn didn't care that the rat mistook him for a pirate, and directly told it the truth, even pointing to the pirate ship behind him. Major Rat's face stiffened. He looked up at the pirate ship and saw a series of heads poking out from its side. "Pirate hunter." Major Mouse was somewhat bewildered, and the Navy personnel who were on high alert looked at each other in confusion. "Oh, and also the ship's treasure. Exchange it for Pele and send it over together." Dunn glanced at Major Mouse, walked past him, and the naval ranks instinctively parted to make way for him. Major Rat and a group of sailors were completely bewildered as they watched Dunn stride past the naval forces and head towards the town. However, when they boarded the pirate ship and faced the two pirates who were not bound but did not offer any resistance, they all began to speculate about Dunn's strength. After recognizing the pirate Doru, who had a bounty of 2.5 million berries, they immediately took Doru and his crew back to their base and conducted a brief interrogation. Doru and his crew of pirates have resigned themselves to their fate. The pirates, or rather the people, of great pirates are all bullies who prey on the weak and fear the strong. For example, after Dunn merely demonstrated his strength, this group of pirates, who had only been at sea for a year, had no intention of resisting and obediently sailed their pirate ship to the naval base. Controlling flames? And he wasn't hurt even after being cut by a knife. The returning Major Rat muttered about the information he had just obtained from the interrogation of the pirate hunter. An ability user? A fire-related ability user. Major Rat, who had originally been thinking of embezzling the treasure and the pirates' credit, has now behaved himself. These pirates were rather ignorant, but Lieutenant Commander Rat had been in the Navy for many years and naturally knew about devil fruits. Upon hearing Doru mention fire, he immediately thought of devil fruit users. "Sir." Marine's reminder brought Major Rat, who had just been released from prison, back to his senses. "That pirate hunter. Convert the bounty and the treasure into berries and send it to that pirate hunter. Also, ask him about his situation, at least find out his name." Major Rat thought for a moment, and decided that he didn't want to provoke the other party without figuring out what kind of ability they possessed. As for the natural sciences, he didn't even dare to think about it. After all, the 3 vice-admirals in the Navy who are skilled in Logia are currently enjoying great success and seem to be on the verge of being promoted to admiral. That's a candidate for general. In the town's tavern, Dunn sat at the bar, listening to the people inside discussing what had just happened. It's quite rare to see the Navy escorting a large group of pirates back to base. I heard they were captured by a pirate hunter, a whole ship full of pirates. Some people are clearly well informed. That's impressive. They captured so many pirates, they must be top-tier fighters on the high seas. Definitely. They say there were dozens of pirates. To capture so many, they must be incredibly powerful. Hearing the discussion about himself in the tavern, Dunn, who was just beginning to explore this world, found it quite interesting and listened quietly until the arrival of naval soldiers suddenly silenced the tavern. "Pirate hunter, this is the bounty and treasure converted into berries, totaling 9,530,000 berries." The arriving naval soldiers saw Dunn sitting at the bar, walked over, saluted, and handed him a bag. In an instant, all the tavern patrons who had been discussing the matter turned their attention to Dunn. "Thank you." Dunn glanced at the bag and took it directly. You need to register to claim the bounty." The naval soldier saw Dunn take the bag away, waved, and a marine behind him with paper and pen stepped forward, staring intently at Dunn. "We need to register who took the bounty and report it. My name is Dunn, and I've just set sail." Dunn's eyes swept over the two naval soldiers before he answered. "Then what?" "There is none left." Seeing Dunn shake his head, the two naval soldiers exchanged a glance, and one of them asked again. "So, where are you going next?" "Next? Let's keep searching for pirates. After all, I'm a pirate hunter." Dunn raised an eyebrow and said. Chapter 6. "So, that's what he said?" Dunn. Upon hearing the report from the marine in front of him, Major Rat waved for the man to leave and then picked up the den mushi. Regardless, anyone suspected of having superpowers needs to be reported. After all, devil fruits are treasures of the sea. Ability users are extremely rare. Even within the Navy, there are only a few dozen devil fruit users. Earning merit is not just about capturing pirates or guarding a base, recommending talented people is also a way to earn merit. If the Navy recruits a devil fruit user based on his report later, that would be a significant achievement. Headquarters? This is Major Rat from the 16th Sub-Base of the East Daxia Sea, ID number 00733. I have something to report. After the den mushi connected, Major Rat spoke solemnly. The town's dock. Dunn looked at the bustling docks again, pondering the information he had just gleaned, and examining the nautical chart he had just purchased. The East Daxia Sea is vast, or rather, all four seas are vast. He set his next stop as Frostmoon Village. He didn't plan to go to the Grand Line until he had enough strength, so he decided to go to Shimotsuki Village according to his preset plan. However, there is no ship that goes directly to Shimotsuki Village. According to the distance between here and Shimotsuki Village on the nautical chart, it would take a typical merchant ship about 3 months to reach the destination. Of course, if you go directly there without stopping at other islands, the trip might be shorter. In that case, let's hire a boat. After a moment, Dunn shook his head slightly and made his decision. Perhaps by taking other methods, one could find a ship directly to Shimotsuki Village on a larger island, but he didn't need to waste time on that. With nearly 10 million berries on him, Dunn has more than enough to live on, at least for the short term. I'll head to Frostmoon Village as quickly as possible and begin my plan to become stronger. Once the decision was made, the rest was much simpler. After paying a reward of 500,000 berries, Dunn easily hired a merchant ship. After a brief preparation of supplies, the ship left the dock and sailed into the ocean. The news of Dunn's departure by ship was naturally reported to the Navy, who were paying close attention. Among them, the name Frostmoon Village, which Dunn had inquired about, was also reported to Major Rat. Is this his destination? After pondering for a moment, Major Mouse reported the news to headquarters again. Anyway, the report has been submitted, so I don't need to worry about it anymore. Several days later. Naval Headquarters, Admiral's Office. The crunching sound of senbei, rice crackers, made the veins on Sengoku's forehead throb as he looked down at official documents. Garp, UBD, don't you have your own office? Unable to contain himself any longer, Sengoku suddenly looked up and glared at Garp. Don't be angry, Sengoku. I just finished eating the senbei. Garp, completely unconcerned about Sengoku's anger, emptied the bag of senbei into his mouth, got up, walked to Sengoku's desk, opened a drawer, and took out a large bag of senbei. Seeing his old comrade in arms like this, Zhangguo was speechless, and more than that, he felt helpless. If you feel like you have a lot of free time, I'll find you a task. Upon hearing this, Garp, who had just sat down, turned to look at Sengoku but remained silent. You've once again refused the appointment to be promoted to Admiral, and the world government has a lot of complaints about you. Seeing Garp's expression, Sengoku sighed and said, all they can do is complain. Garp looked away, ripped open the bag in his hand, and acted as if he didn't care. Fine, you're right. Upon hearing this, Zhangguo's forehead creased with a few black lines, but he then looked somewhat helpless. The title of Naval Hero has been used in the Navy for over a decade. The Navy deliberately portrayed Garp, who captured the Pirate King, as a hero of the Navy. Garp's personal influence is indeed very large now. As long as he doesn't make a mistake, the Navy and the world government won't touch Garp, or rather, even if he makes a mistake, they won't touch him. Moreover, this is a top-tier combatant on the high seas. Nobody's a fool. Since Roger's execution, the number of pirates has been increasing every year. Now, in the New World, Whitebeard, Kaido, and Charlotte Linlin are gaining more and more influence, and the Navy is preparing to put the plan to build its top combat power on the agenda. What do you think about officially promoting Akainu and the other two to admirals? Watching Garp eat senbei, Sengoku suddenly spoke up, but changed the subject. You can discuss this with the world government. Garp, however, seemed completely unconcerned. The main reason for promoting these three to the rank of admiral is to counter the growing power and influence of Whitebeard and his crew on the Grand Line. It's imperative. Additionally, the Air Fleet Admiral is preparing to take up his post at the world government. Oh! Garp was taken aback and turned to look at Sengoku. Previously, the Navy only had two admirals, Sengoku the strategist and Zephyr the black-armed. However, due to certain circumstances, Zephyr, although still an admiral, only served at the Marine Headquarters training camp. Therefore, the next fleet admiral should be Sengoku. So, are you sure you're not up to the job? For you, it's just a title, it won't add much to your responsibilities. The Warring States period tried to persuade him again. Garp shook his head immediately, refusing outright. All right, since that's the case, take a look at this report. As he spoke, Sengoku tossed a report to Garp, who caught it and glanced at it with some confusion. A pirate hunter has appeared in the East Blue. He looks to be 14 or 15 years old and has just set sail. He seems to be a fire-related ability user, or even a Logia-type Devil Fruit user. Go back and see if you can find him. If we find one, we'll see if we can recruit him into the Navy. A fire-related ability user, possibly even a Logia type? Sengoku, what do you take Logia types for? Garp was speechless. He's been a member of the Navy for decades and has fought countless pirates. There are only a handful of Logia-type Devil Fruit users, and 3 of them were just kids from the Navy. What if? Of course, if you're unwilling, I'll send someone else. Upon hearing this, the Warring States period answered directly. Oh, that's exactly what I needed to do back home. Upon hearing this, Garp immediately stood up. I finally have time to go back, so I'll treat it as a paid vacation. Watching Garp sway away, Sengoku shook his head helplessly. This old friend is becoming increasingly unmotivated, and he naturally knows why. However, given their advanced age, Sengoku didn't want to force the issue. The most crucial next step is the appointment of the 3 admirals. After all, this appointment also requires internal reforms within the Navy, as well as disseminating information about the Navy's 3 major combat capabilities throughout the seas. Deterrence is also a crucial element. Chapter 7. On a merchant ship bound for Shimotsuki Village. Constitution, 5.1, rapidly changing due to certain influences. Dunn stared thoughtfully at the changed information on the data panel. During his journey to Shimotsuki Village, Dunn naturally made the most of his time, focusing on studying his flame fruit abilities and the data panel. The data dashboard can very intuitively show his mastery of abilities, and can even increase the abilities he has just mastered. For example, Flame Fruit, mastered. Swordsmanship, basic mastery. You have mastered the basic sword techniques and training methods. He gained an additional swordsmanship skill, thanks to his sword training during this period, and the evaluation of the Flame Fruit also changed. Of course, the change that Dunn was most concerned about was the change in his physical condition. After all, everyone in the One Piece world has a monstrous physique, with astonishing physical strength, especially the strong ones, none of whom are weak. When he first gained data processing abilities, his physique was only 1.7, indicating that he was undergoing rapid transformation. In just about a month, his physical fitness level increased from 1.7 to 5.1. He had already tried it just now. His overall physical fitness has indeed improved significantly, at least compared to his previous level. He tested everything: speed, strength, stamina, even resilience, and all of them increased. Is it because of the devil fruit or something else? Or perhaps, after coming to this world, my physical abilities will gradually become stronger because of this world. This was his guess. Of course, this is not a bad thing. In this world, the foundation of strength is physique, and it is also the basis for becoming a strong person. I just don't know how long this growth in strength will last. Based on his strength estimation, he now possesses approximately 5 times the strength he had before his transmigration. Of course, for the strong in this world, 5 times the strength of an ordinary person is indeed not enough. After all, on this ship, even a strong crew member could easily lift a barrel of wine weighing hundreds of kilograms. However, Dunn did not dwell on this matter for too long. Because he has now discovered another terrifying ability that is not marked on the data panel. Of course, it essentially means that the vital points disappear, and the damage to the body will be converted into other effects of the ability that deducts health points. It's normal for him to expend energy during exercise, but the after effects of his physical activity were classified as injuries. He can see the amount of blood lost due to excessive training, but the fatigue and physical abnormalities caused by training will completely disappear after eating to restore his blood volume. In the world before the time travel, there was a limit to the number of people. Of course, such things may exist in this world, but their potential is extremely high. If his idea is correct, his body will change for some reason, and through this ability, he can become stronger quickly by relying on extraordinary effort. Having figured this out, Dunn felt that he wasn't that far from those powerful beings who could destroy the world at will. He is not afraid of hard work, but he is afraid of working hard and getting no results. If there is constant feedback, or even if the feedback is significant, beyond imagination, then he feels like his whole body is made of liver. The King of Rolls is now online. Dunn suddenly stood up, walked to the wall of the room, and picked up the barbell from the floor. Boom boom boom. Tremors and muffled thuds filled the room. On the ship, many crew members turned their heads to look in the direction of Dunn's room. It started again. Everyone on the ship knew Dunn's identity. A pirate hunter who single-handedly captured dozens of pirates, he's incredibly powerful. Nobody knows exactly how powerful they are, but they are definitely much stronger than them. Those ferocious pirates, when dozens of them are gathered together, are quite intimidating, especially to the crew members of merchant ships that sail the seas. No wonder he's so powerful, this person works incredibly hard. I've decided. I'll work hard to become stronger and become a pirate hunter someday. A thin, teenage sailor, who looked no more than 10 years old, clenched his fist and spoke with a determined expression. Before he could finish speaking, he received a slap on the back of the head. You're a pirate hunter, right? Did you clean the deck? Some unfriendly voices rang out, startling the group of people who immediately buried themselves in their work. The young crew member, who had just looked so determined, turned around and saw that it was the captain. He quickly smiled obsequiously and bowed as he went to scrub the floor. Becoming a pirate hunter? That's a death sentence, kid. Don't even think about it if you're not prepared to die. The old captain saw a group of people busy with nothing in particular and said irritably. He had witnessed firsthand the scene of countless pirates setting sail after the Pirate King's execution. Pirates fighting, islands being plundered, and the sea in chaos. These are not places ordinary people like them can venture into. People will truly die there. In this chaotic world, it's already quite remarkable that these people can live honestly until death. Thinking of this, the old captain looked towards Dunn's room. Yeah, I guess only people like that are allowed to get involved. Dunn wasted no time in the following period, exercising extensively every day, and naturally, his food intake also increased significantly. The merchant ships, which originally planned to go directly to Shimotsuki Village, had to find an island to stop on and purchase supplies. Of course, the time didn't increase by much. After about 2 months and 20 days, the merchant ship arrived ahead of schedule and reached its destination around noon. My lord, that is Frost Moon Village. In the distance, an island came into view. Dunn nodded slightly upon hearing this. The ocean is indeed vast. On their journey, they encountered few ships, let alone pirates. Of course, this could also be due to the East Daxia Sea. Dunn placed his hand on the railing, a hint of anticipation flashing in his eyes. Body datafication, your vital points have disappeared. Upon being attacked, damage is converted into health deduction. Your panel attributes will change based on your own strength. You will not die until your health reaches 0. Current physical age, 14 years old. Constitution, 9.9, rapidly changing due to certain influences. Current health, 100%, recovering, eating will restore health quickly. Innate talent, unyielding when your health reaches 0, enter a brief enhanced state, all your physical attributes are increased tenfold, your health will no longer decrease, all negative status effects will be removed, current duration, 10 minutes, cooldown, 1 day. Ability. Flame Fruit, mastered a powerful Logia-type Devil Fruit ability, granting the ability to create clones and manipulate flames, continuously enhances the body. The fruit's drawbacks have been eliminated, weaknesses and the host soul, current fruit development, 9%. Swordsmanship, mastery. You have mastered the basic sword techniques and training methods. This is his current stats, the result of his training over the past 3 months. His physique has surpassed that of an ordinary person by 10 times in his previous life, making him incredibly strong. Chapter 8. But that's relative to before the time travel. For the world, perhaps it has only caught up with the normal level. And Dunn was well aware of this. Fortunately, the signs of rapid transformation haven't disappeared, meaning my body is still getting stronger. It's very likely due to that devil fruit, since the description of the fruit mentions that it continuously strengthens the body. As for swordsmanship, he knew very well that he didn't know much about swordsmanship, but his basic slashing and thrusting movements, as well as his honing and training of strength, raised his evaluation to a higher level. He will spend the next period of time improving his strength in Frost Moon Village. Of course, he wouldn't be overly ambitious. As for physical fitness, it's good enough if it can be continuously improved. He doesn't dare to hope for mastering or awakening a devil fruit right now, but his training will not stop. Therefore, his purpose in coming to Shimotsuki Village was to improve his swordsmanship to the level of cutting through iron and become a true swordsman. As for haki, he was at least to have mastered 2 types of haki. As for Conqueror's haki, he was unsure if he had the aptitude for it. But the confidence derived from the data-driven panel meant that, even without Conqueror's haki, he was absolutely no weaker than anyone else on this sea. Mastering the dual-color haki is enough. As the ship docked, Dunn stepped onto the gunwale and turned to look at the group of people on the deck behind him. Hiring is over, everyone. After saying that, Dunn jumped off the boat and landed on the small dock of Frost Moon Village. There were a few people on the dock, not many, and they didn't seem to care much about the arrival of a merchant ship, each busy with their own affairs. Dunn inquired about the location of the dojo and went directly there. On the merchant ship, watching Dunn's disappearing figure, a group of people looked at each other in bewilderment. What are you looking at? We're not like this, gentleman. Hurry up and get ready to buy some supplies. Also, I'll go see if we can transport some goods. The captain's shout spurred the crew into action. Smack! The bamboo sword struck his head, producing a hollow echo. Zoro, with a large bump on his head, clutched his head, covering the spot where he had been hit by the bamboo sword, but his face was full of resentment. You lost for the 1959th time. A girl of about 10 years old gripped the bamboo sword and spoke calmly. This has happened nearly 2,000 times since Zoro entered the dojo. She's gotten used to it, or rather, become numb to it. You wait, I will definitely defeat you. Releasing his grip on his head, Zoro picked up the bamboo sword he had just thrown down, staring intently at Kuina, and said, "Looks pretty hot-blooded." However, with his bruised and swollen face and a large bump on his head, he looked rather comical. So funny, laughter came from the entrance of the Taoist temple. Then, the laughter drew Zoro's angry glare. Hearing the laughter, Zoro turned his head and looked at the dojo entrance with displeasure. He then saw a boy of about 14 or 15 years old standing by the door, leaning against the dojo gate and watching the two of them. The boy was dressed in loose white clothes, his black hair looked rather long, and his features were very soft and well-proportioned, without any sharpness in his expression. Judging from his appearance alone, he seemed like an easygoing person. However, the smile on his face made Zoro feel that he was being mocked, and naturally he was resentful. Who are you? Zoro glanced at Dunn standing at the door and asked directly. They've come to learn swordsmanship. Upon hearing the question, Dunn stepped in, his gaze sweeping across the dojo's spacious courtyard before finally settling on Kuina and Zoro. Learn swordsmanship? Wait a minute, I'll go tell my father. Kuina wasn't surprised, since there were quite a few people at the dojo learning swordsmanship, but judging from their appearance, they didn't seem to be locals. After Kuina left, Zoro walked up to Dunn, tilting his head back and looking at him with an arrogant expression. What are you looking at me for? Dunn looked down at Zoro in front of him, comparing this green-haired brat to the Yonko's first mate from a Nagashima who had withstood the combined attack of the 4 emperors and slashed King, the top general, and couldn't help but laugh out loud again. If he had a camera den mushi, he would definitely have taken a picture of Zoro's current appearance. This will definitely become a dark chapter in Zoro's history. You're still laughing? I'll beat Kuina one day. Zoro raised his hand to wipe the blood flowing from his nose, and said with a defiant look on his face. Upon hearing this, Dunn shook his head. Defeating her was impossible, but since Gina was still alive, rescuing her wasn't out of the question. As for whether it will change Zoro's fate, who cares? If you wish to join the dojo and learn swordsmanship, then I will be your senior brother. Seeing Dunn deep in thought, Zoro's mind raced, and he immediately thought of his fellow disciples. Since we're all here to learn swordsmanship, naturally whoever is the strongest will be the boss. Upon hearing this, Dunn shook his head immediately. So that's how it is. Does that mean if I defeat Kuina, she'll have to call me senior brother? Zoro's eyes widened suddenly as he stared at Dunn in disbelief. Impossible. You can never beat me. Before Dunn could respond, Gina's voice rang out. Then, Shimotsuki Kojiro and Kuina came out together, with Kuina looking quite displeased. I challenge you. Zoro was enraged upon hearing this and raised his bamboo sword, pointing it at Kuina. Kuina, with the bamboo sword pointed at her, glanced at Dunn and her father before walking straight out of the dojo, with Zoro following her. It seems another swordsmanship contest is about to begin. Please excuse my behavior, my daughter and my disciple just like to joke around. Shimotsuki Kojiro did not stop Kuina and Zoro's match. Instead, he smiled and said to Dunn, his eyes scanning Dunn as he spoke. When he saw Dunn's eyes, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes behind his glasses. It's all right. After all, they're learning swordsmanship. It won't end until someone is proven superior or one side is convinced. These two, I don't think they're the type to be easily convinced. Dunn chuckled and said. Your Excellency sees things clearly. Upon hearing this, Shimotsuki Kojiro nodded slightly, then made an inviting gesture, which Dunn naturally accepted. After entering a room inside the dojo, Shimotsuki Kojiro knelt down and invited Dunn to sit down. Dunn sat down casually with a relaxed expression, his eyes sizing up Shimotsuki Kojiro. Top swordsman, extremely dangerous. Shimotsuki Kojiro had a blood-red mark on his head. Recalling the marks on the heads of the pirates and other people he had encountered before, Kojiro was the most dangerous person he had ever met. Aren't you from Shimotsuki Village? Kojiro looked at Dunn with suspicion, but he didn't lose his manners and asked. Yes, I came by merchant ship today. I heard from other places that there's a dojo here that teaches swordsmanship, so I came. Dunn nodded slightly and calmly gave his answer. Then why do you want to learn swordsmanship? Kojiro asked again. Is it important? Dunn raised an eyebrow and asked in surprise. I suppose so. Kojiro nodded. His attitude, however, made Dunn ponder. He lowered his head slightly in thought, and after a moment, he raised his head slightly and gave his answer. Chapter 9. Perhaps then, I could live freely in this world. A crisp, decisive sound rang out in the room. Clearly, Dunn's answer surprised Shimotsuki Kojiro, a surprise that was immediately apparent on his face. Living freely in this world is not an easy thing. Shimotsuki Kojiro seemed to understand the meaning behind Dunn's words and said with some emotion. Therefore, you must learn swordsmanship, become stronger, and possess the power to protect yourself. Dunn continued calmly, so, dojo master, are you satisfied with my answer? Satisfied? Actually, no matter what answer you give, I will teach you. After all, when wielding a sword, you must have your own beliefs. Only a sword like this can possess greater power. Shimotsuki Kojiro began to speak, a warm smile on his face. Dunn, of course, did not take Shimotsuki Kojiro's words as a sermon. After all, he only had a superficial understanding of swordsmanship, while Shimotsuki Kojiro in front of him was a top-tier swordsman. At least for now, in terms of understanding of swordsmanship, the other party far surpassed him. Moreover, it seems that becoming a true swordsman truly requires the support of a certain belief. This also includes domineering presence. Since you've come to learn swordsmanship, let's talk about the fees. As Dunn was thinking this, Shimotsuki Kojiro, who was kneeling opposite him, spoke again. Okay. Dunn nodded, although he remembered that Zoro hadn't been charged any fees for learning swordsmanship and had even been allowed to eat and stay at the dojo for free. However, Zoro, or rather the entire Shimotsuki village, should all be related by blood. Moreover, this is for the best. 500,000 pegs, in a year. Seeing Dunn nod, Shimotsuki Kojiro thought for a moment and offered a price. Upon hearing this, Dunn shook his head immediately. Seeing his action, Shimotsuki Kojiro assumed that Dunn was going to bargain, so he waited for Dunn to continue speaking. 1 million berries, for a year. Dunn then stated his price, leaving Shimotsuki Kojiro momentarily stunned. He thought he had guessed wrong. 1 million berries, I want you to teach me everything without holding back. Dunn stated his requirements. Yes, but only after your swordsmanship has reached a certain level will I teach you more. Shimotsuki Kojiro looked directly into Dunn's eyes, remained silent for a moment, and then nodded. Seeing that Shimotsuki Kojiro agreed, Dunn breathed a sigh of relief, smiled, and was about to speak when two children poked their heads in from outside the door. Kuina, go give. Shimotsuki Kojiro was about to speak when he realized he hadn't asked Dunn's name. Dunn. Okay, Kuina, go arrange a place for Dunn to stay. He'll be learning swordsmanship at the dojo from now on. Oh. Kuina looked at Dunn curiously and nodded. On the other side of the door, Zoro, whose face was even more bruised and swollen than before, stared at Dunn as he stood up. Come along too, we'll need you to help carry things later. Kuina spoke directly to Zoro, then led the way. Dunn bowed slightly to Shimotsuki Kojiro before following behind Kuina. After the three left, Shimotsuki Kojiro did not get up, looking somewhat puzzled. He could tell what Dunn's actions meant, but the gesture seemed standard, like some kind of etiquette. Could my guess be true? Shimotsuki Kojiro muttered to himself. Although they had only just met and for a short time, Shimotsuki Kojiro saw arrogance, or rather pride, in Dunn. Wrong. Shimotsuki Kojiro frowned and shook his head. Although it may seem like arrogance and pride, it is actually more of a condescending attitude. Although he appeared to be being very polite, that's how he felt. Are they nobles? Shimotsuki Kojiro felt that there were many contradictions in Dunn. Dunn, on the other hand, didn't think that much about it. At this moment, he was holding Zoro by the back of the neck, carrying the kid as he followed Kuina forward. So, even in a place as big as a dojo, he could get lost. Dunn's voice was full of curiosity. He knew Zoro was an absolute terrible navigator, but the dojo wasn't that big, and Zoro had probably been there for a long time. How could he get lost? Yes. Kuina answered crisply without turning around. Impossible, how could I be lost? Zoro struggled desperately, but the hand holding him by the back of the neck remained steady, without even a slight tremor. If I hadn't stopped you, you would have turned around and disappeared somewhere. Dunn's words brought Zoro, who was struggling desperately, to a standstill. He then slumped down, looking somewhat dejected. Speaking of which, you lost again. Seeing Zoro give up struggling, Dunn suddenly provoked him. Zoro, who had just given up struggling, instantly snapped back to his senses and began to struggle again. What did you say? Zoro looked furious. So, you won? Dunn asked with a strange expression as he saw the furious Zoro. Upon hearing this, Zoro's expression froze. I didn't win yet, but I'll win next time. Zoro muttered to himself, head down. Tch. Kuina didn't even turn around. This is your room. I'll have Zoro bring you what you need later, never mind, I'll bring it over myself. Kuina pushed open the door to one of the rooms in the Taoist temple and stepped back, saying. Dunn tossed Zoro to the ground, stepped into the room, looked around, and nodded. To join the dojo and learn swordsmanship, you must first learn from me. Only after you have mastered the basic sword techniques will my father teach you. After Kuina finished speaking, she looked at Dunn, who was much taller than her, and then turned to look at Zoro. Come with me to get something. Zoro followed Kuina with his head down and a dejected look on his face. Clearly, Dunn's words had still affected him and he was not yet recovered. After watching the two leave, Dunn turned around and looked at the small room in front of him. He didn't have many requirements for his living environment, although it wasn't big, it was clean enough. Dunn walked to the small table in the middle of the room and sat down cross-legged. First step complete. Now it's time to see how much we can learn. Dunn rested his face on his arm, lost in thought. Dunn is quite looking forward to his studies. Although he had already eaten the devil fruit, what followed was truly the beginning of his contact with the power of this world. Kuina and Zoro returned quickly. Zoro carried a large bag full of simple daily necessities. Hey! After watching Zoro put down a large bag, Dunn placed a small bag on the table in front of him. Kuina and Zoro both cast puzzled glances at them. This is... Kuina was somewhat curious. Tuition fees and living expenses thereafter. As soon as Dunn spoke, Kuina became even more confused. She walked over, opened the bag, and her eyes widened in surprise. That's a lot of money. Zoro was taken aback, walked over and peeked in, then immediately swallowed hard. It costs this much to learn swordsmanship at a dojo. Zoro is numb. He didn't pay. Chapter 10. So why do you have to pay so much money to learn swordsmanship at a dojo? Even if you sold yourself, you wouldn't be worth that much, right? This is Zoro's current thought. He followed Kuina, who was carrying a money bag, with a confused mind, and then he met Shimotsuki Kojiro. Shimotsuki Kojiro was also surprised when he saw Kuina hand him the bag containing berries. I have no money. Watching Kojiro count the berries, Zoro struggled for a moment before finally speaking dejectedly. These words drew surprised looks from Kuina and the other woman. You're different from him, you don't need to pay. Shimotsuki Kojiro immediately saw through Zoro's thoughts and shook his head. In fact, his purpose was already clear when he mentioned the tuition fee, and the boy named Dunn understood his meaning. That is, this teaching session was merely teaching, it was a transaction. The other party pays the tuition, and he teaches them swordsmanship. It won't be mixed with anything else. His gaze was completely unfathomable to the boy, his demeanor was contradictory. As for the boy's plans, he had no idea. Zoro was about to speak when Kuina beckoned him to leave. 9 million peso, that's a huge sum. After a moment, Shimotsuki Kojiro looked at the neatly arranged belly in front of him and sighed. This isn't something just anyone can produce. A strange aura, coupled with the ability to come up with so much money right off the bat, that's quite interesting. The next day, Dunn got up early, warmed up according to his own training method, and then met the other students in the dojo. 99% of the students in the dojo were from Shimotsuki Village. Most of them were around the same age as Kuina and Zoro, with only a few around the same age as Dunn, and 2 young men who looked to be in their early 20s. The group was clearly very curious about Dunn's sudden appearance. Especially at breakfast, everyone stared wide-eyed at Dunn's astonishing appetite. He didn't seem to eat very fast, but the food in front of Dunn disappeared in a flash. This amount of food is beyond the range of ordinary people. Shimotsuki Kojiro, who was also having breakfast, noticed Dunn's condition and a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. Compared to these young people, he naturally had more experience and knowledge. Sure enough, this boy named Dunn was quite special. Thud. Zoro stared at Dunn in shock, the meat he was holding falling from his hand, and saliva dripping from his mouth without him even noticing. No wonder it cost so much, is this for food? Zoro muttered to himself. Dunn naturally didn't care about the stares of those around him. After all, for him, being able to eat is essential to getting enough energy, which might lead to better training results. Of course, he didn't want to go on a hunger pang to cultivate. An incident during breakfast led everyone to get to know this new disciple who had just joined the dojo. Shortly after breakfast, the formal swordsmanship training began. Everyone meticulously practiced the basic sword techniques with their wooden swords. Dunn showed no impatience whatsoever. Kuina was right there, teaching Dunn basic sword techniques, correcting him as she taught. Not far away, Shimotsuki Kojiro's gaze remained fixed on Dunn. He has practiced some swordsmanship, but it seems to be self-taught, and he has never even used swordsmanship in combat. Many of his moves are somewhat distorted. Of course, this doesn't mean that techniques that are out of form are useless. It's just not that efficient. But this also reveals Dunn's background. After watching for a short while, Shimotsuki Kojiro turned and left. Kuina, on the other hand, was very patient, seemingly taking her temporary instructor role seriously, and explained the purpose of the moves and how to generate power. Dunn, of course, showed no impatience whatsoever. I now understand why I felt awkward when practicing sword techniques before. I can only say that I still have a lot to learn. The morning is for basic training, while the afternoon is for free exercise. The battle between Kuina and Zoro continues. Most of the other disciples left the dojo, while a few stayed to continue their practice. Dunn was among them. Practice consistently using standard sword techniques. He remained alone until everyone else had left. Whoosh! The rhythmic sound of the wooden sword slicing through the air filled the air. Dunn remained calm. A day of training had left his breathing completely still. This amount of weight posed no challenge for him. But after Kuina's modifications, he could feel that there was indeed a lot of skill involved in using the posture and generating power. Since it was beneficial to his own development, Dunn was very patient. As darkness fell, when Kuina came to call Dunn for dinner, she watched Dunn practice his swordplay with standard techniques and a strange expression appeared on her face. Spiritual practice requires a balance between work and rest. That evening, all the other students at the dojo left, leaving only 4 people for dinner. During a break, Shimotsuki Kojiro calmly offered a reminder. "These are easy for me, I can feel my control over my strength improving." Dunn naturally understood that the man was speaking to him. Shimotsuki Kojiro was taken aback. He glanced at Dunn, then his gaze fell on Kuina and Zoro, who were seemingly eating but actually listening intently. "In that case, if you can meet my requirements within a month, I will personally teach you." "Good." Dunn nodded, then buried himself in his food. In the following period, Dunn entered a period of intense competition. This even forced Shimotsuki Kojiro to send Dunn to train on his own elsewhere. Otherwise, he was worried that the other students would be negatively affected. Of course, even so, Kuina and Zoro entered a frenzied, competitive phase. In the woods behind the dojo, Dunn closed his eyes, holding a wooden sword in his right hand to fend off attacks from all around. Kuina and Zoro, wielding 4 wooden swords, relentlessly attacked Dunn. Dunn paid no attention to the pain of the wooden sword striking him, focusing his mind on sensing the swords attacking from all around. He didn't know if this method of cultivating perception and awareness was correct. But it seems that Wang Luffy was taught observation haki by Rai using this method. Whether it works or not, there's no harm in trying. Consider it practice for Kuina and Zoro. Whoosh! The two were breathing heavily, and after exchanging a glance, they both saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Of course, there was more resentment in Gina's eyes. As she gets older, she becomes increasingly aware of the differences between people. Or rather, the difference between men and women. I had already sensed this from Zoro's rapid increase in strength. And now, this situation is even more pronounced in Dunn. She could clearly sense that Dunn had held back at least 90% of his strength when he swung the sword, but even so, she and Zoro couldn't directly withstand the wooden sword being swung at them. That's the difference. Innate differences. There are countless powerful women on the seas, even the Pirate King, who stands at the top of the ocean, is a woman. Just as the resentment in Gina's eyes grew stronger, Dunn's voice suddenly rang out. Chapter 11. Dunn's voice rang out in the woods, and Kuina, who was attacking, suddenly stopped. Even Zoro, who was seriously attacking Dunn, noticed that Kuina's emotions were off and stopped what he was doing. Are you saying that women can also reach the top through their own efforts? After a moment of silence, Gina looked up at Dunn, who had removed his blindfold, and asked. No, what I mean is that some people are born with terrifying talents that most people can't match, and you just need to surpass yourself. Dunn smiled and shook his head. I don't know who told you what, but your sword has become insecure, that's about it. Dunn looked at Kuina, then at Zoro. But you're not very bright and you're so single-minded, yet you're progressing very quickly. This is Dunn's own assessment. In the past month, he could feel that Zoro's strength had improved very quickly. It must be said, but there are indeed terrifying inherent differences between people in this world. Are you praising me or insulting me? Zoro pointed to his nose, somewhat hesitant. I praise you. Oh, Thank you. Zoro nodded, then looked at Kuina. He also noticed that Kuina's mood seemed a little off. There are some things you need to think through yourself. When I first arrived, your father asked me why I wanted to learn swordsmanship, and I gave him my answer. After saying that, Dunn waved his hand and walked towards the dojo. He had his own things to take care of. Kuina's personality is a bit too strong, she needs to figure things out on her own. Perhaps Zoro needs to give him a wake-up call. He didn't fight Kuina for as long as Zoro did. Their relationship was at most that of acquaintances. In the woods, Dunn didn't care what would happen after he left, but went straight to see Shimotsuki Kojiro. Shimotsuki Kojiro seemed to be waiting for Dunn. When he saw Dunn come over, he raised his hand to invite Dunn to sit down. Dunn, of course, didn't stand on ceremony and sat cross-legged opposite Kojiro. Thank you. As soon as he sat down, Shimotsuki Kojiro thanked him. About Kuina. Upon hearing this, Dunn asked in return. Yes, it's about my daughter. Kojiro did not deny it, but nodded in agreement. Zoro's strength is improving rapidly. I can sense that Kuina is finding it increasingly difficult to fight him. Shimotsuki Kojiro sighed. Female swordsmen, due to their innate physical limitations, are significantly weaker than male swordsmen. Kuina's personality is just too strong-willed. When Shimotsuki Kojiro said this, Dunn could hear the difficulty in his tone. So, it was you who said this, which has made Kuina a bit distracted lately. Dunn naturally knew and understood what Shimotsuki Kojiro meant. In a way, it was a way of giving Kuina a heads up. As a father, he certainly knew his daughter's personality, and perhaps he was worried that she would be defeated by Zoro soon and couldn't get over the mental hurdle. That's true, but I don't have a good solution either. Shimotsuki Kojiro raised his hand and rubbed his temples, saying with a helpless expression, as he looked up at Dunn. And your talent is excellent, no, it should be said, exceptionally excellent. Perhaps, even on this vast ocean, your talent is no less than that of the strongest beings on the sea. Shimotsuki Kojiro said very seriously. This is his true feeling. Strong physical strength and recovery ability, as well as learning ability and the mental fortitude to endure the tedium of spiritual practice. If Shimotsuki Kojiro hadn't realized that Dunn had no intention of becoming his disciple, he really would have wanted to take Dunn on as a student. However, this terrifying talent made Shimotsuki Kojiro feel that he might not even be qualified. I won't argue with that. Dunn smiled upon hearing this. In terms of data alone, it has already surpassed everyone else. The role of data in spiritual practice is stronger than Dunn had previously imagined. Upon hearing Dunn's words, Shimotsuki Kojiro shook his head helplessly, then his expression turned serious. In just 1 month, your growth has far exceeded my expectations, but I also have some doubts about you. Confuse? Dunn looked at Shimotsuki Kojiro with a serious expression, a hint of curiosity on his face. What is your identity? Or rather, are you a world noble? Or, are you a celestial dragon? When Shimotsuki Kojiro asked this question, his tone was very serious. A celestial dragon? You mean me? Dunn had considered that Shimotsuki Kojiro might have any questions, but he never expected him to ask this one. Why do you think I'm a celestial dragon? Because I can sense from you a kind of superiority over everything. Seeing Dunn's reaction, Shimotsuki Kojiro already knew the answer, so he directly expressed his feelings and the reason why he asked such a question. This quality you possess is natural, not deliberate. When I first saw you, I thought it was some kind of arrogance or pride. But it seems different. Upon hearing this, Dunn did not refute it, but instead stroked his chin and began to think. Since Shimotsuki Kojiro said so, it must be true. But I suppose he was still quite humble. He's not some overpowered genius, even if he wanted to fight those powerful figures on the high seas, he should at least develop his strength first. etc. Dunn suddenly understood why Shimotsuki Kojiro had this feeling. It's because we're looking at everything in this world from an outsider's perspective. Because they are outsiders and know what will happen in the future, they naturally possess a sense of superiority. This feeling arose naturally. It seems you've figured out the reason. Shimotsuki Kojiro noticed the change in Dunn's expression and spoke up. That's one of the possible reasons I've thought of. Dunn did not refute this. Good that you can think of something. Now, let's talk about what you want to learn from me. After hearing Dunn's reply, Shimotsuki Kojiro did not ask any further questions, but instead changed the subject. He didn't know the reason for Dunn's aura, but because of Gina's matter, he could offer a hint. Since the other party had already thought of it, there was no need to say anything. Swordsmanship, and domineering aura. Dunn did not hesitate at all. Is it imposing? Sure, the way you did it when you fought Kuina and the others was indeed a method of training observation haki. But they were too weak, so the effect was very limited. As for armament haki, it requires a certain level of physical strength, and your physique is more than sufficient. When Dunn attempted to practice observation color, Shimotsuki Kojiro had already guessed what Dunn wanted to learn, so he wasn't very surprised at this moment. While such domineering aura is uncommon across the world, it's not exactly a secret either. As for swordsmanship, my advice is that I can give you some pointers on the power of your swordsmanship, but you should find a style that suits you. Chapter 12. What Shimotsuki Kojiro said was certainly true. After all, there are different kinds of geniuses. Although Dunn had only been at the Ishin Taoist temple in Shimotsuki Village for a month, the talent he displayed astonished Shimotsuki Kojiro. That's why he gave that answer. Looking for a sword style that suits you. Dunn spoke softly, a flame rising in his mind. The power of the flame fruit is the most powerful force he currently possesses, so he naturally thought of flames. Then an image of a gaunt old man surrounded by flames appeared in his mind. If the temperature were comparable to the sun, and the full force were used for too long, it could even destroy an entire realm. He didn't slack off in developing the fruit, and tried to use all his knowledge to create some powerful moves. Perhaps we could give it a try. Dunn's eyes lit up. A cool and powerful move, no man could resist it. It seems you already have an idea, but before that, I will teach you the philosophy of swordsmanship. This is my understanding of the sword, and you can use it as a reference. Seeing Dunn's expression, Shimotsuki Kojiro, who had been keeping a close eye on him, smiled and said, "No problem, I do have some ideas, but they're quite difficult, though I'm definitely willing to try." Dunn wasn't in a rush and wasn't willing to spend time trying it out. You can't neglect your basic swordsmanship training. From now on, you'll practice on your own every morning, and I'll guide you through more advanced techniques and swordsmanship in the afternoons. After saying that, Shimotsuki Kojiro glanced at Dunn a few times, got up and walked to the wall to the side. He pulled on the wall, and it slid open to reveal rows of sword racks. You can choose a sword, although I don't recommend beginners use real swords, but you are different. Without standing on ceremony, Dunn got up to make his selection. They all look very high quality. Dunn knew that Shimotsuki Kojiro's father was Shimotsuki Kozaburo, a master swordsmith from Wano country, and that Enma, one of the 21 great-grade swords, was made by him. Dunn picked up each sword, and finally grabbed a longer, wider, and heavier one. Dunn is now over 1.8 meters tall, and this sword is taller than him. Seeing Dunn return with this unusually long sword, Shimotsuki Kojiro was somewhat surprised, but he didn't say anything. As the door closed, the two sat down again. His gaze swept over the long sword lying beside Dunn, and Shimotsuki Kojiro felt a pang of emotion. These are swords my father forged, but he hasn't forged any in a long time. You can name it yourself, perhaps one day it will become a true black blade, renowned throughout the seas. Black knife. Upon hearing this, Dunn asked in return. He knew what the black blade was, and that it was forged by its wielder and seemed to be related to domineering aura. The black blade is a form of sword. The wielder will experience countless battles and be enveloped in countless domineering auras, which will change the nature of the sword itself. Its material will become much stronger, even to the point of being indestructible. Seemingly intrigued, Shimotsuki Kojiro stared directly at Dunn. And now, Hawkeye, who has just become the world's greatest swordsman, wields the knight, a black blade. He thought that when he said this, Dunn would change. But when Dunn heard about Black Knife Knight, his expression seemed unmoved. Don't you want to become the strongest swordsman in the world? Shimotsuki Kojiro asked with a chuckle. I don't have that thought right now. After all, I'm still quite a distance from that great swordsman. Dunn shook his head. After all, my goal has always been to live a peaceful life in this world. If that great swordsman gets in my way in the future, perhaps this title will belong to someone else. Upon hearing Dunn calmly announce that the greatest swordsman would be replaced, Shimotsuki Kojiro burst into laughter. Haha, good, I'd really like to see that day come. After all, I've given some pointers on swordsmanship, and I'm honored to have done so. So, I'm not even a swordsman yet. Isn't it a bit too early for us to be talking about this? Looking at Shimotsuki Kojiro laughing heartily, Dunn was somewhat speechless. I believe you have this talent. All right, thank you for your trust, but I'd like to learn observation haki first. Good. Although he didn't know why Dunn wanted to learn observation haki first, Shimotsuki Kojiro didn't refuse. Then I'll take my leave. After speaking, Dunn stood up, grabbed the sword beside him, and left. Shimotsuki Kojiro watched Dunn leave, and after a long while, a short old man slowly walked out. He knows I'm here. He may have awakened his observation haki, but he just can't use it freely yet. The old man holding his pipe sat down in the spot where Dunn had just been sitting. What does father think? If you can't see through it, then this old man is no match for you. I can't see through it either. Shimotsuki Kojiro shook his head. Although he was a master swordsmith and also knew some swordsmanship, his swordsmanship was not as good as his son's. However, perhaps it really is possible to forge a black blade. I never expected him to choose that one. Thinking of the sword that Dunn took, Shimotsuki Kojiro felt a pang of emotion. That sword was no worse than the great sword, but when I forged it, I didn't have enough strength left, so it was very rough, and it was very heavy. The sword Dunn took was indeed more than 10 times heavier than an ordinary sword. He has exceptional talent, this weight is nothing to him. Shimotsuki Kojiro was clear about the strength of Dunn's attack. Or rather, Dunn's strength and appetite were directly proportional. Well, you should focus on teaching him, he probably won't be staying here for long. Shimotsuki Kojiro stood up and spoke, then walked outside, but after a few steps he turned back, his somewhat dim old eyes looking at Shimotsuki Kojiro. And Zoro. He paused, a hint of nostalgia flashing in his eyes. Zoro's swordsmanship talent is inherited from his grandfather and father, even from that dragon-slaying swordsman. He needs to be properly taught. Clear. Born in Wano country, Shimotsuki Kojiro also deeply believed in concepts like bloodline. Zoro's ancestors included several great swordsmen, so Zoro must also have that talent. Dunn did indeed vaguely sense that someone was nearby but hadn't shown up while he was talking to Shimotsuki Kojiro. But he didn't investigate further. Just focus on doing your own job well. After returning to his room, Dunn raised his hand and drew his sword. The dull luster wasn't very bright, and wave-like patterns covered the entire blade. It was much thicker than an ordinary sword, but the sharpness of the blade was by no means diminished. Holding the sword hilt, with the sword held horizontally in front of his chest, a wisp of fire appeared in Dunn's hand, spreading along the blade, and in an instant, the flames completely covered the sword. However, this flame is merely an illusion. Chapter 13. Aside from looking a bit cooler, the flames currently enveloping the sword haven't improved much. Dunn brought up his data dashboard. Body datafication, your vital points have disappeared. Upon being attacked, damage is converted into health deduction. Your panel attributes will change based on your own strength. You will not die until your health reaches 0. Current physical age, 14 years old. Constitution, 21, rapidly changing due to certain influences. Current health, 100%, recovering, eating will restore health quickly. Innate talent, unyielding when your health reaches 0, enter a brief enhanced state, all your physical attributes are increased tenfold, your health will no longer decrease, all negative status effects will be removed, current duration, 10 minutes, cooldown, 1 day. Ability. Flame Fruit, mastered a powerful Logia-type Devil Fruit ability, granting the ability to create clones and manipulate flames, continuously enhances the body. The fruit's drawbacks have been eliminated, weaknesses and the host soul, current fruit development, 13%. Swordsmanship, mastery. You have mastered the basic sword techniques and training methods. The improvement in fruit quality wasn't significant, only 4%, but the physical constitution had improved by a full 11 compared to a month ago, and the rapid transformation notification still hadn't disappeared. This means that his physical condition is still rapidly improving. This is a good thing. However, as for devil fruits, at least here, it's not convenient to fully attempt to develop them. After the flames on Dunn's sword completely subsided, he sheathed it, and the heat in the room gradually disappeared. It seems we need to make other plans. It's impossible to quickly develop the power of a devil fruit just by imagining it. You need a place where you can fully utilize the fruit's abilities. The initial plan was to train here to become a swordsman, which Dunn estimated might take several years. However, if it would delay the development of the fruit, then we can't stay here for so long. Now that you've mastered the dual-color haki, it's time to go out and explore. However, probably not many people know about the power of his devil fruit. Dunn squinted as he thought about the pirates he had sent to Naval Base 16. Of course, he didn't take it too seriously. The next day, inside the Ishin dojo, Dunn gripped the long sword he named Flame and diligently practiced basic sword techniques. However, the sword in his hand, though dull in luster, still attracted the attention of many people with its imposing presence. Kuina and Zoro occasionally glanced at the sword in Dunn's hand. Not far away, Shimotsuki Kojiro nodded secretly. This is why he believed Dunn would definitely achieve great things in the future. He remained humble and composed, never neglecting the fundamentals of training, even though his abilities far surpassed those of others. How many times have you won your fight against Zoro? Kuina, wielding a bamboo sword, was waving it around Dunn when she suddenly heard him speak. 1995 times. Kuina responded upon hearing this. Zoro, standing to the side, blushed deeply upon hearing this, but a loss was a loss. Dunn nodded. It seems that Kuina's time of death was approaching. Since he was here, Dunn naturally wanted to prevent this from happening. It wasn't difficult for him, he just needed to be a little careful. This is why he had to learn observation haki first. Having just finished training, Zoro, clearly still remembering Dunn's question, challenged Kuina once more. Meanwhile, Dunn began his training in observation haki. In the quiet room, Shimotsuki Kojiro looked at Dunn with a smile. Since you know about haki and a method of training it, you should know what observation haki is, right? He didn't start explaining right away, instead, he asked a question first. What is observation haki? Dunn lowered his head slightly in thought. His understanding of domineering aura was limited to what he had learned from works before his transmigration, but for someone who had never encountered this kind of power before, it was rather abstract. He could only try his best. However, Dunn was able to provide an answer to Kojiro's question. Is it perception? Dunn paused for a moment before giving his answer. Ha, perception? Is that how you view observation haki? But that understanding isn't entirely wrong. Kojiro said with a smile. Everything breathes. Whether you listen to it, feel it, or perceive it, whether it's the wind, the water, the trees, or even the steel. Of course, there are others. After all, observation haki isn't just effective against living beings, it also includes inanimate objects. You'll need to understand this when you train in swordsmanship. Dunn nodded slightly, indicating that he understood, but he actually found it somewhat abstract. Seemingly sensing Dunn's thoughts, Kojiro smiled and said, actually, everyone possesses a domineering aura, but this aura lies dormant within the body and needs to be awakened through training. Of course, once it's unleashed, it needs to be strengthened through training. I know all that. Dunn nodded. So, Conqueror's haki is like that too. Conqueror's haki is different, it's a talent that's truly one in a million, not everyone possesses it. Kojiro immediately shook his head, seemingly realizing that this contradicted the previous statement that everyone possessed an imposing aura, and explained again. I don't actually know much about Conqueror's haki, but I do know that the number of people who possess it on this sea is extremely small. The underlying meaning of this statement is that it's too early for you to say this. Dunn nodded, not interrupting Kojiro. Actually, you have already awakened observation haki, but you haven't realized it yet, or rather, you haven't sensed this power yet. Kojiro's words startled Dunn, who looked down at his hands. You say that seeing color is perception, then according to your understanding, you perceive everything around you, you perceive the breath of everything around you. Upon hearing this, Dunn closed his eyes and tried to concentrate. Suddenly, a deadly killing intent swept over us. The violent killing intent instantly sent shivers down Dunn's spine. Almost instinctively, Dunn wanted to transform into an elemental form to resist this killing intent. But the murderous intent came swiftly and disappeared just as quickly. The source of the murderous intent was Shimotsuki Kojiro, who was sitting not far away. In Dunn's perception, it was as if a blood-red figure sitting cross-legged on the ground had suddenly appeared in front of him, like a blood-red demon. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Shimotsuki Kojiro opposite him. You felt it? Shimotsuki Kojiro asked with a smile. The aura I released was very subtle, those who aren't sensitive enough to auras or breathing wouldn't be able to detect it. Do you remember that feeling from just now? Chapter 14. Dunn looked surprised. Because the data-driven dashboard now has an additional capability. Observation haki, basic mastery. You have a basic understanding of the energy of all things in the world. Have you mastered it just like that? It was so easy that Dunn found it hard to believe, hence his surprise. Energy. Dunn keenly noticed the data panel's explanation of observation haki. Energy? That's a good way to put it. Upon hearing Dunn's soft words, Shimotsuki Kojiro was taken aback, then remained silent for a moment before smiling and speaking. This is a description of what you perceive, whether it's breath or energy, it represents what you understand. It seems you do understand. As Shimotsuki Kojiro spoke, his tone was filled with emotion. In his previous conversation with his father, Dunn had vaguely sensed that he had awakened the haki of observation haki. But Dunn's current behavior clearly shows that he has already noticed this ability. The speed at which they mastered it is truly astonishing. Even he himself started with swordsmanship, gradually becoming aware of the breadth of all things before mastering observation haki. Thank you. Dunn closed his eyes again, and after that strange feeling returned, he opened his eyes and thanked him. Now that you've mastered observation haki, armament haki might not be difficult for you. Shimotsuki Kojiro didn't waste any time and actually planned to explain armament haki again. In my hometown, armament haki is called Ryuo, a power born from one's own body. If one's physique is not strong enough, it is difficult to use this power. This is a fluid and controllable power. Once mastered, it not only grants formidable defensive and offensive capabilities, but can even be used to contend with some powerful devil fruit users. When Shimotsuki Kojiro said this, he gave Dunn a meaningful look. A burning sensation occasionally emanated from Dunn's room. Having mastered observation haki, Shimotsuki Kojiro could clearly sense it. So, observation haki is the perception of energy from things outside oneself, while armament haki is actually the application of some kind of energy within one's own body. Dunn had already realized what was going on. The description of observation colors possesses energy. So, according to Kojiro, perhaps that's the case too. If it's difficult to understand, try replacing it with the easier to understand concept of internal energy, and Dunn will be able to grasp it more clearly. Of course, there may be some differences, but the general meaning is probably the same. Maybe so. Shimotsuki Kojiro paused for a moment, considered Dunn's words, and then nodded. My abilities are limited, so I can only explain it to you based on my own understanding. There are many people stronger than me on this high seas, and perhaps my explanation of observation haki and armament haki is also incorrect. Kojiro Shimotsuki's awakening of the way. The owner is too modest, your skills are truly remarkable. Dunn shook his head slightly. Although Luffy encounters many strong opponents along his journey in the original work, and most of them can put him in a tough fight, in reality, those strong opponents that Luffy meets on the high seas are only a small group. A top-tier swordsman is already a master on the high seas. Everyone has their strengths, and my abilities are limited, and I can see the limits of my abilities. But you, Dunn, I can't see your future clearly. Is this a compliment? Dunn smiled. No, I'm just stating a fact, the world isn't peaceful. I know you might know a lot about this world, so you should also know what it's like. As Dunn listened, he gradually sensed something was amiss and immediately raised his hand. I've heard that armament haki is a guided power, a way to visualize yourself wearing an invisible suit of armor. An abrupt change of topic. Shimotsuki Kojiro naturally noticed it. He knew he had said a bit too much. He had a feeling that Dunn might become a very important figure on this sea in the future. Such people, whatever they do, can potentially impact the entire world. You're right. As Shimotsuki Kojiro spoke, he raised his hand and held it horizontally in front of him. Dunn narrowed his eyes. Through his observation haki, he sensed something covering Shimotsuki Kojiro's arm. This is the most basic application of armament haki. It happens when you have a sufficient amount of armament haki. As Shimotsuki Kojiro spoke, his arms appeared to be covered in what looked like a layer of dark purple armor. And like this, Kojiro reached out and grabbed the cup from the table in front of him. A dark purple hue covered the cup. Entanglement, or rather, flowing sakura, these are all applications of armament haki. Dunn nodded slightly upon hearing this. I see. If you understand, you can try to guide your own armament haki later, but it is not an easy thing. Many people cannot guide this energy in their entire lives. Of course, this shouldn't be difficult for you. Dunn looked down at his hand, tried a little, but failed. It seems I'll need to put in more effort. There's one thing I need to remind you, the amount of domineering aura is limited, not inexhaustible. If too much domineering aura is consumed, it takes time to recover it. This time frame varies from person to person, as does the amount of domineering power, and all of this is related to physical strength. I understand, I'll remember. Dunn nodded. In that case, you can go back first. You can try it yourself. Starting tomorrow, I will personally spar with you. If you want to quickly understand how to use your sword and haki, combat is the best way. Shimotsuki Kojiro said with a smile. However, there was a hint of malice in his tone. Of course, Dunn wasn't afraid at all. After getting up to say goodbye, Dunn left. After emerging, Dunn took out a silk scarf and blindfolded himself, then unleashed his somewhat clumsy observation haki. In any case, it's always good to use it more often. Excessive use of one's domineering aura can negatively impact one's health, but Dunn can completely disregard this adverse effect. Kuina wields her sword alone in the dojo, while Zoro, in the woods behind her, swings a bamboo sword with stones strapped to it. Dunn returned to his room and attempted to channel his armament haki. At dusk, an inconspicuous merchant ship slowly approached Frostmoon Village and then docked at the pier. Those who came down all had their faces covered by grey cloaks. However, one of the people's heads was a bit exaggerated. "Hurry up, gather the food and leave. Our identities are somewhat sensitive." A deep voice rang out, and the others nodded in unison. The group traveled silently and soon arrived at the Ishin dojo, where Shimotsuki Kojiro was already waiting. "The food is all prepared." Shimotsuki Kojiro maintained his slow, deliberate tone and calm demeanor, clearly indicating that he had already made an agreement with these people. Chapter 15. Dangerous Target. Dunn, who was using observation haki to assist his perception and guide armament haki, suddenly opened his eyes. Having just mastered observation haki, his current range of perception is not large, barely covering the entire Ishin dojo. The group that arrived at the dojo gave Dunn an extremely dangerous feeling. There are still so many strong individuals, some even stronger than Kojiro. Within the field of vision perceived by observation haki, the heads of this group were all marked with extremely dangerous symbols, and one person even had 3 blood-red question marks above their head. A group of revolutionary soldiers. Dunn opened his eyes and had already guessed who the newcomer was. Shimotsuki Kojiro did indeed have some private contact with the Revolutionary Army. Monkey D. Dragon, or as he's known, the Dragon. The leader of the Revolutionary Army, a thorn in the side of the world government, the son of marine hero Monkey D. Garp, the father of Luffy, a Logia-type Devil Fruit user, whose Devil Fruit ability is suspected to be related to wind. Although he hasn't made many moves, this person should be one of the top individuals on the high seas, a powerhouse at the level of the 4 emperors. Dunn was somewhat tempted, but sat back down before he had fully stood up. These people represent trouble. You could say that the Revolutionary Army led by Dragon has lofty ideals and wants to overthrow the world government and change the world, but that has nothing to do with him. He wasn't even from this world. Respect is all I'll say, as for contact, I'll pass. With that thought in mind, Dunn composed himself, sat up straight again, and continued his training to guide his armament haki. Kuina and Zoro, who were having another match, also noticed these uninvited guests and saw Kojiro lead them into the dojo, but they didn't go to check on the situation. "You lost again, for the 1997th time." Kuina looked at Zoro calmly. "UBD, don't be so arrogant. I can definitely beat you." Upon hearing Kuina's emphasis, Zoro instantly bristled. "You can never beat me." Kuina stood with her hands on her hips, glancing sideways at Zoro. Zoro gritted his teeth, pointing his bamboo sword at Kuina. "I will not only defeat you, I will also defeat Dunn, and then I will become the strongest swordsman in the world." After Zoro finished speaking, he glared at Kuina, panting heavily. "Defeat Dunn?" Dina was taken aback, her expression somewhat puzzled. Dunn had only been at the dojo for a month, but her skills had improved by leaps and bounds, especially her swordsmanship, which had exceeded her expectations. And then there was her extraordinary physique, which amazed her father. According to her father, Dunn's physique was no weaker than that of the monsters on the sea. Now, Kuina felt that she couldn't defeat him no matter how hard she tried. "You simply can't see the difference between us and him." Kuina spoke in a low voice. "UBD, are you admitting defeat?" Although Zoro has a terrible sense of direction, he's not stupid and occasionally has a flash of inspiration. And now, he could sense Kuina's emotions. "You've beaten me 1997 times, don't underestimate yourself, or what about when you lose to me?" Zoro glared angrily at Kuina. Kuina kept her head down and didn't speak. Zoro stared at her with wide eyes, then suddenly raised the bamboo sword in his hand. It's decided, Kuina. Next, I will defeat you, and then I will defeat Dunn. After Zoro finished speaking, he snorted and turned to leave, only to see a figure appear behind him that had somehow appeared. Dunn N. Zoro paused for a moment, then stammered. I'm giving you this chance. Come on, Zoro, challenge me, defeat me, and charge towards the title of the world's greatest swordsman. Dunn held a wooden sword in his hand and looked at Zoro with a solemn expression. Zoro. Kuina. What? You're scared now? Looking at the stunned duo, Dunn said with a smile. UBD, don't be so arrogant. Zoro snapped again, this guy just couldn't take a joke. He grabbed his sword and charged straight at Dunn. Then, he was met with a devastating blow. A red mark appeared on Zoro's face, and blood streamed from his nose. Zoro staggered back several steps, covered his nose, and tears streamed down his face. The stinging and pain in his nose caused Zoro to burst into tears and snot. Seeing this, Kuina also came over and gripped the sword hilt with both hands. I'll do it. As she spoke, Kuina launched an attack, wielding her wooden sword with both hands. Thump. A pleasant sound is a good start. Kuina covered her head and squatted down, her eyes welling up with tears. Seeing the two people, one holding their head and the other covering their nose, Dunn sat down on the ground and watched them. Last time, was there something you didn't finish saying? Kuina, who was holding her head, saw Dunn sit down and suddenly asked a question. What? You said there's a woman who has become a top-tier powerhouse on this vast ocean. Kuina was clearly still bothered by this matter. Dunn sighed. He understood Shimotsuki Kojiro's intentions, but it seemed to make Kuina increasingly doubt herself. Sit still. Dunn pointed to what was in front of him. Kuina and Zoro sat down, their eyes filled with tears as they stared intently at Dunn. Zoro and Kuina both knew that Dunn was very knowledgeable about the sea. People are different. There are many races on the sea, such as fishmen, mink, and giants. They are very different from humans. Let me put it this way, once a giant reaches adulthood, their strength is comparable to a vice-admiral in the marine headquarters. On the high seas, that's considered a very powerful individual. Kuina and Zoro clearly had no idea what the strength of a marine headquarters vice-admiral was. Charlotte Linlin, who has now established Whole Cake Island in the new world of the Grand Line, is, well, one of the strongest pirates. When she was 5 years old, she destroyed a village of giants. Is it a woman? Dina looked at Dunn and spoke, clearly showing some curiosity. Yes, woman, but perhaps few can match her talent on this vast ocean. Dunn sighed. He genuinely believes that. If I keep pushing myself to surpass my own limits, will I be able to reach that level in the future? Dina looked at Dunn. She seems to need some affirmation. Swordsmanship has no end, you can keep practicing and constantly become stronger. Dunn looked at Gina and said. The original intention was to shatter Kuina's illusions and make her realize the truth. In terms of talent, Kuina may be very talented, but she hasn't reached a level that makes people take notice. Yes, it's impressive that Kuina, at around 10 years old, can defeat adults at the dojo, but Kuina herself can also feel that she's finding it increasingly difficult to fight Zoro. Yes, that's how I want to keep getting stronger and become the world's greatest swordsman. Kuina's expression shifted, seemingly pondering Dunn's toxic advice, while Zoro downed the entire bowl of poisoned chicken soup in one gulp, exclaiming excitedly. It was the red marks on his face and the blood from his nose that made him look somewhat comical. Chapter 16. Come on, let's make a promise, let's strive together to become the world's greatest swordsman. Zoro was completely engrossed in the frenzy, so excited that he looked like he was about to collapse at any moment. However, no one responded to his excitement. A cold wind blew by, and the trees in the forest rustled. Even Zoro felt a little embarrassed. I never said I wanted to become the world's greatest swordsman. Dunn stroked his chin, lost in thought. Since you've chosen to study swordsmanship, don't you want to become the strongest? Zoro's eyes widened, and he clenched his fists tightly, seemingly not quite believing Dunn's words. Kuina was also somewhat curious. I am different from you. You all have firm ideals, but I don't. Maybe in the future you will become the world's greatest swordsman, while I will still be an insignificant nobody. When I go out and someone bullies me, I'll just say my junior brother or sister is the world's greatest swordsman, and then I can eat and drink without paying. Dunn said with a smile. Then, Zoro and Kuina's eyes turned contemptuous. That's so decadent. Zoro said with a hint of disappointment, but then he frowned. No, I'm the senior brother. Zoro realized what was happening. I taught you swordsmanship, so you should call me senior sister. Kuina nodded repeatedly. Look at you all, you're about to become the world's greatest swordsman, and you're still so petty. It's just a title. I'm older than you, so it's perfectly reasonable for me to call you junior brothers and sisters, isn't it? Dunn said with a helpless expression. Is this reasonable? Zoro raised his hand and scratched his short green hair, looking at Kuina. Kuina raised her hand and scratched her face, without giving an answer. Besides, given how close we are, it's perfectly reasonable for me to use your names to dine and dash in the future, isn't it? Dunn spoke again. Zoro and Kuina exchanged bewildered glances, unsure how to respond. The two felt that Dunn's words were problematic, but they didn't know how to refute them. Haha! You little rascal, you've got them all confused. Suddenly, a voice appeared, and Dunn turned his head sharply. Behind a tree in the direction of the dojo, a person with a head bigger than their body stood there, half of their head showing. A monster! Zoro's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Don't talk nonsense! Dunn slapped Zoro, who had jumped up, back to the ground.
वीडियोस बनाने हैं, फिल्मोरा है ना?